on to the finale. So right now, Percy is talking to Luke, and there's a scorpion about to kill Percy. Let's see how the book ends. Goodbye, Percy. There is a new golden age coming. You won't be part of it. He slashed his sword in an arc and disappeared in a ripple of darkness. The scorpion lunged. I swatted it away with my hand and uncapped my sword. The thing jumped at me, and I cut it in half in midair. I was about to congratulate myself until I looked down at my hand. My palm had a huge red welt, oozing and smoking with yellow guck. The thing had gotten me after all. My ears pounded. My vision went foggy. The water, I thought. It healed me before. I stumbled to the creek and submerged my hand, but nothing seemed to happen. The poison was too strong. My vision was getting dark. I could barely stand up. 60 seconds, Luke had told me. I had to get back to camp. If I collapsed out here, my body would be dinner for a monster. Nobody would ever know what had happened. My legs felt like lead. My forehead was burning. I stumbled toward the camp, and the nymphs stirred from their trees. Help! I croaked. Please! Two of them took my arms, pulling me along. I remember making it to the clearing. A counselor shouting for help, a centaur blowing a conch horn. Then everything went black. I woke with a straw in my mouth, or with a drinking straw in my mouth. Sorry. I was sipping something that tasted like liquid chocolate chip cookies. Nectar. It's having ambrosia again. I opened my eyes. I was propped up in bed in the sick room of the big house, my right hand bandaged like a club. Argus stood guard in the corner. Annabeth sat next to me, holding my nectar glass and dabbing a washcloth on my forehead. Here we go again, I said. You idiots, Annabeth said, which is how I knew she was overjoyed to see me conscious. You were green and turning gray when we found you. If it weren't for Chiron's healing. Now, Chiron's voice said. Percy's constitution deserves some of the credit. He was sitting near the foot of my bed in human form, which was why I hadn't noticed him yet. His lower half was magically compacted into the wheelchair, his upper half dressed in a coat and tie. He smiled, but his face looked weary and pale, the way it did when he'd been up all night grading Latin papers. How are you feeling? He asked. Like my insides had been frozen, then microwaved? Apt, considering that was a pit scorpion venom. Now you must tell me, if you can, exactly what happened. Between sips of nectar, I told them the story. The room was quiet for a long time. I can't believe that Luke, Annabeth's voice faltered. Her expression turned angry and said, Yes, I can believe it. May the gods curse him. He was never the same after his quest. This must be reported to Olympus, Chiron murmured. I will go at once. Luke is out there right now, I said. I have to go after him. Chiron shook his head. No, Percy. The gods won't even talk about Kronos, I snapped. Zeus declared the matter closed. Percy, I know this is hard, but you must not rush out for vengeance. You aren't ready. I didn't like it, but part of me suspected Chiron was right. One look at my hand and I knew I wasn't going to be sword fighting anytime soon. Chiron, your prophecy from the oracle, it was about Kronos, wasn't it? Was I in it, and Annabeth? Chiron glanced nervously at the ceiling. Percy, it isn't my place. You've been ordered not to talk to me about it, haven't you? His eyes were sympathetic but sad. You'll be a great hero, child. I'll do my best to prepare you, but if I'm right about the path ahead of you... Thunder boomed overhead, rattling the windows. All right, Chiron shouted. Fine! He sighed in frustration. The gods have their reasons, Percy. Knowing too much of your future is never a good thing. We can't just sit back and do nothing, I said. We will not sit back, Chiron promised. But you must be careful. Kronos wants you to come unraveled. He wants your life disrupted, your thoughts clouded with fear and anger. Do not give him what he wants. Train patiently. Your time will come. Assuming I live that long? Chiron put his hand on my ankle. You have to trust me, Percy. You will live. But first you must decide your path for the coming year. I cannot tell you the right choice. I got the feeling that he had a very definite opinion, and it was taking all his willpower not to advise me. But you must decide whether to stay at Camp Half-Blood year-round or return to the moral world for 7th grade and be a summer camper. Think on that. When I get back from Olympus, you must tell me your decision. I wanted to protest. I wanted to ask him more questions, but his expression told me there would be no more discussion. He had said as much as he could. I'll be back as soon as I can, Chiron promised. Argus will watch over you. He glanced at Annabeth. Oh, and my dear, whenever you're ready, they're here. Who's here? I asked. Nobody answered. Chiron rolled himself out of the room. I heard wheels of his chair clunk carefully down the front steps, 2 at a time. Annabeth studied the ice in my drink. What's wrong? I asked her. Nothing. She set the glass on the table. I just took your advice about something. You, need anything? Yeah, help me up. I want to go outside. Percy, that isn't a good idea. I slid my legs out of bed. Annabeth caught me before I could crumble to the floor. A wave of nausea rolled over me. Annabeth said, I told you. I'm fine, I insisted. Didn't want to lie in bed like an invalid while Luke was out there planning to destroy the Western world. I managed to step forward, then another, still leaning heavily on Annabeth. Argus followed us outside, but he kept his distance. By the time we reached the porch, my face was beaded with sweat. My stomach had twisted into knots, but I had managed to make it all the way to the railing. It was dusk. The camp looked completely deserted. The cabins were dark and the volleyball pit silent. No canoes cut the surface of the lake. Beyond the woods, into the strawberry fields, the Long Island Sound glittered in the last light of the sun. What are you going to do? Annabeth asked me. I don't know. I told her I got the feeling that Chiron wanted me to stay year-round, to put in more individual training time, but I wasn't sure that's what I wanted. I admitted I'd feel bad about leaving her alone, though with only Clarice for company. Annabeth pursed her lips, then said quietly, I'm going home for the year, Percy. I stared at her. You mean to your dad's? She pointed toward the crest of the Half-Blood Hill. Next to Thalia's pine tree at the very edge of the camp's magical boundaries, a family stood silhouetted, 2 little children, a woman, and a tall man with blonde hair. They seemed to be waiting. The man was holding a backpack that looked like the one Annabeth had gotten from Waterland in Denver. So very interesting. So right now, Percy is realizing now that Annabeth is leaving him. So it'll just be him and Clarice right now, staying at the camp. So would you stay there for year-round, or would you go back home and live with Mom, even though monsters might get you? And I think I would choose to stay at Camp Half-Blood because I just don't want anything to happen to my mom again. Let's see what happens here. We're almost done. I wrote him a letter when we got back, Annabeth said, just like you suggested. I told him I was sorry. I'd come home for the school year if he wanted me. He wrote back immediately. We decided we'll give it another try. That took guts. She pursed her lips. You won't try anything stupid during the school year, will you? At least not without sending me an Iris message? I managed to smile. I won't go looking for trouble. I usually don't have to. When I get back next summer, she said, we'll hunt down Luke. We'll ask for a quest, but if we don't get approval, we'll sneak off and do it anyway. Agreed? Sounds like a plan worthy of Athena. She held out her hand. I shook it. Take care, Seaweed Brain, Annabeth told me. Keep your eyes open. You too, wise girl. I watched her walk up the hill and join her family. She gave her father an awkward hug and looked back at the valley one last time. She touched Thalia's pine tree, then allowed herself to be led over the crest and into the mortal world. For the first time at camp, I felt truly alone. I looked out at Long Island Sound, and I remembered my father saying, the sea does not like to be restrained. I made my decision. I wondered if Poseidon were watching. Would he approve of my choice? I'll be back next summer, I promised him. I'll survive until then. After all, I am your son. I asked Argus to take me down to Cabin 3 so I could pack my bags for home. And that is the end of The Lightning Thief. So that's a surprising ending to me. If I were Percy, I would stay at Camp Half-Blood with Clarice and Chiron training me. Very interesting. I hope you enjoyed the book. A lot of action. This, again, is just book 1 of the series. Many more if you want to continue to read about Percy. Thanks for listening.